Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro Adventures. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got an absolutely massive win for another Shadowrun one, because Total Eclipse has romped home. Now as usual, I'll cover that on the desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel related stuff and some other poll related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been told know to choose their enemies carefully. Now these are wonderful people who make all of this possible, and their efforts are very much appreciated. Now if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, or you'd like to gain access to these videos a week early, or you'd like to gain access to one of the other levels of patronage we've got, then we've got a Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Total Eclipse. So, this is Total Eclipse, which came out for Shadowrun by FASA in 1992. Putting it in late first edition, early second edition sort of era. I think this came out before second edition. I think the release date's actually January 1992, so it beat it out. Now, in this adventure, we're back to dealing with the music industry. But this time, it's not quite a different adventure. The setup of this one is that this shaman in the middle here, whose name is Eclipse, has made a deal with a spider spirit. You can see the spiders on his hat there. He is a spider shaman now. And he has made a deal with a spirit called Twilight. And this is one of the spirits that escaped in the third Shadowrun novel by Robert Charette, I believe it is, where a bunch of spirits are released into the world, and this follows one of them. Now, Twilight is much weakened by his time being held captive before he was released, but after they join up, they recognize in the music of a particular band, an emerging band seen around the edge here, the Elementals, that one of their tunes is part of a ritual which will allow Twilight to regain all his power. So they want access to the band. Best way to do this is to hire Shadowrunners, so they hire the players to kidnap the band, under the pretense that they are working for a corporation and the Elementals have broken their contract. So the players have to go out and kidnap the band, but the shaman will later on try to get the players involved in the ritual, which will basically sacrifice the band to release all the power for Twilight. And the players will obviously want to stop that, being heroes rather than just Shadowrunners. But anyway, I've been going on for a while and we haven't even looked at the back cover. So, the word is out, it's chummer. If you want blazing rock and roll, there's only one band to see, the Elementals. The buzz is they're about to become the next local band to hit the big time. There's just one problem, the Elementals have broken their recording contract, and in the world of corporate domination, nobody goes solo. Runner's job, find the band and bring them home, alive. So, we go in. For some reason the binding in this one's breaking a little. It doesn't seem to be glued quite as well as the others. Production quality is very nice, as always. FASA really was knocking it out of the park with their desktop publishing standards. Everything's very readable and clear. And we start off with a prologue story, which details how Eclipse meets up with Twilight, and they recognise the song. As we can see, Twilight is this sort of spider spirit. In our introduction, talking about games mastering notes, how to use the book. The plot synopsis is quite a long one, not absolutely massive, it's just a page and a half, detailing out exactly what happens. So, musical extractions. Basically, the players get hired, and then they have to locate the band. But the band splits up, so they have to tail them. Now, I have to admit, when our group was playing this, we thought we were under a time limit, so our party split up, leaving basically one player going after each band member, which worked out for some players, but didn't work out for others, so we ended up capturing two of the band members and then having to go back for the others. And we will come back to the story of how I got involved when we reach that section. So we've got Home in the Wind, where we follow Whispering Wind, the female lead singer, back to her home, and have to do a break-in and kidnapping. She's got a couple of mercenaries. Cops might turn up. And we've got the elf, following him back to an arcade, which seems terribly 80s now. I don't think they exist anymore. And he's with some gang members who will help him. Then we've got the troll, gentleman on the drums here, who works in security. They end up having to raid the store where he works. And then Happy Hunting Grounds. There's the member of the band here who's a Native American, and they are going back to some of their tribe members. And this is where I got involved, because my character was sneaking in and got spotted by all of these Indian squatters, attacked by the spirit, and I was getting arrows fired at me. And the games master's like, "What are you going to do, dodge?" And I sarcastically went, "No, what do you think I'm going to do, catch it in my teeth?" So he made me roll my dex to see whether I would catch it in my teeth. And I failed and got hit by arrows. And repeatedly hit, because now I was working under a penalty and lots of arrows were coming in. It was like the entire Sioux Nation were hiding in the bushes attacking me from cover. And I still get reminded of that sarcastic comment to get me to quieten my tone a little. Anyway, with all 4 of the band members kidnapped, you deliver them to your Mr. Johnson. But then he sets an assassin on you if you aren't going to follow up and help him. Who is this very dramatic fellow? Seems to be cosplaying a vampire as well as being one. Nemesis, a hitman vampire. And the players will get a bit annoyed at the hitman coming after them. Obviously, if they've agreed to take part in the ritual, which is going to sacrifice the band members, then you'll skip this middle section, but they end up going back to Mr. Johnson's home, Eclipse, and trying to find out where he's gone. And then we'll find that he's taken the band out to the forest to do this ritual. And you head out there, and there's street samurai protecting him, a werewolf shapeshifter, and you're going to be battling it out as the band starts to play to perform this ritual. And of course, Twilight himself will begin to manifest as the ritual goes on, if the players don't stop it. And that's kind of it. We've obviously got the legwork sections here, where you reach out to your contacts to find out about the elementals. Your cast of shadows, you've got Eclipse. You've got Twilight, the free spirit, greater form. Whispering Wind, Wildfire, Bambi the Troll, and Coyote, the 4 band members, and picking up the pieces and experience. And as always, some handouts at the end. Newspaper headlines, if the players are successful, if they're unsuccessful, they see how it affected. We've got an advert for Kaji, or Cage, or however you pronounce it, the Shadowrun Club. An advert for the Secrets of Power trilogy, which Twilight being released is mentioned in the 3rd of those 3 books. An advert for MechWarrior, which I've covered on the channel before. Now, this is very, very straightforward compared to most Shadowrun adventures. It's not got all the twists and turns that I would expect. The initial capturing of the gang, or of the band, is quite fun. But it can totally go off the rails in the middle. If the players go along with it and don't realise what's happening and then have to turn on their Mr. Johnson later, or if they then have to hunt down the Mr. Johnson to save the band, but then they're not getting any monetary reward, which seems very out of behaviour for Shadowrunners. They would be very tempted to just go, "Oh well, we did our job, we were paid, why should we continue?" Although, obviously, they've got their dislike for the Mr. Johnson Eclipse here, because he's sent an assassin after them, especially a vampire assassin. So they might just want to get him and kill him just for the sake of it.
And so that was Total Eclipse, and that won the poll this week with some 42% of the vote. Absolutely romping home. But I think I'm going to take a break from putting Shadowrun stuff in the polls for a few weeks, maybe a month or so, because they have been winning so often lately. And anyway, that's us covered all of the first edition adventures. So we're going to be moving on to second and even maybe third edition. I do think I've got a few of those to cover. But anyway, behind that came Scared Stiffs for the Ghostbusters role-playing game on 26%. Further behind that was Tales from the Ether for Space 1889 on 18%. The second Seal of Repulsion for Mutant Chronicles came in on 8%, and the Key of Deliriad for Slay Industries came in on 6%. It's kind of sad, because these are more obscure adventures which I'd love to cover rather than the main popular stuff, but obviously the popular stuff is popular. Now they're all cleared out this week, and we're going back to a retro RPG one. And the first option here is something that one of the viewers reminded me of, because I was working my way through the Beck-Me coloured box sets. I'd done the basic, I'd done the experts, I'd done the companions, but I haven't covered the Masters or the Immortals. So, reminded that I've got to do those, the first option is Dungeons & Dragons Set 4 Masters Rules from 1985. Now I've got a feeling this is going to win, because Dungeons & Dragons is the big boy of the room and gets a lot of attention. But we shall see, because there are some other interesting things here, especially one of the later ones which we'll talk about. We've got the Adept's Way for Earthdawn. Now, Earthdawn's one of my favourite fantasy RPGs, a post-apocalyptic one where the world has been ravaged by magic and people are coming back out onto the surface, basically from vaults in a Fallout kind of manner, to reconquer the planet. Absolutely great game, which looks at the races in a very different way as well. But one of the main points is everybody is a magical adept. So if you're a baker, you're weaving magic into the bread you bake. And the Adept's Way is interpreting this so you can see how magic is used in this really magical world. Then we've got Fading Suns D20. Now I've covered Fading Suns before, one of the earlier editions, but in the early 2000s everything came out as a D20 version, and this is the Fading Suns one, and I'd be fascinated to have a look through it, because it was contributed to me. One of my other gamers was moving house, they didn't have space, so they dumped a bunch of their stuff that they weren't playing with me, and this is one of them, so while it's in my collection, it's not one I've looked through intensively. Then we've got Sourcebook 3 Mindworks for Rifts. Now, Rifts is always worthwhile. This is the one I was talking about to consider in comparison to Dungeons & Dragons, because Rifts book are great, and this is one of the ones where there's a lot of high-tech stuff in it. Less mutants, less aliens, but way more sets of big powered armor and cool stuff to look through. So definitely give it a consideration. And finally, on the off chance that you might put it in, Terra Counter Terra for Millennium's End. Now, Millennium's End is one of my favourite RPGs. It's almost cyberpunk, it's on the verge of it, it's called Techno Thriller, so it's kind of like high-tech James Bond games, where you're playing secret operatives working for an agency. But it's kind of building in technology, so there are giant robots and stuff like that, while not being quite cyberpunk. A fascinating idea, and it was brilliantly done. And it's kind of been forgotten about since it's the company that made it, Chameleon Eclectic, went out of business just before the year 2000, and the game wasn't really picked up after that, because of its name probably. But please give it consideration, their books were fantastically researched. And other things I've been doing, well, on DrivethruRPG, I've been putting out some more Victorian stuff, some monsters, some villains, some sidekicks, and I'm going to be moving on to Cyberpunk next. I've had some interesting ideas, especially for how to implement cybernetic implants and a kind of cyber psychosis system into 5th edition, and that's what I'm going to be putting out in the next week or so. So check it out on DrivethruRPG, or if you want access to absolutely everything I've written, which I think is about 400 booklets now, check out the Patreon in the description down below, because lairds and librarians get access to a Google Drive rather, with everything on it. So if you want to get access to everything, join at one of those levels and you can get it. Over on RPG Gamer, well, I'm still taking a break, but I've been covering the Vader comics, the High Republic comics, and the latest episodes of Bad Batch, as well as rolling out the latest version of my YT ship designer, as I mentioned in the video last week, or 2 weeks ago now. And that's been successfully rolled out, and I'll be adding to it in the near future, before I take up my daily updates probably at the start of next month. But anyway, I'm tripping over my own tongue, as is very obvious, and I've been rambling on for long enough, so thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.